Good evening and welcome to Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. This is our City Council meeting. Our invocation will be given by Tim Allison, Chaplain and Bereavement Coordinator at the Visiting Nurses Association. Please stand for the invocation and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is Tim here? Is Tim here? All right, anyone want to do it? State your name, and you're going to do the invocation. So,
my name is Philip Dickey, and let us pray.
okay.
Father, thank you for this evening. Thank you for the leadership that represents the City of Independence, Father. Pray that you would just continue to encourage them and guide them as they make decisions throughout our city. And would you just encourage and bless this meeting to be fruitful and encouragement to all. In your name we pray. Amen.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Here.
Perkins. Here.
Stewart.
Here.
McCandless. Here. Steinmeier.
Here.
Hobart. Mayor Rowland.
Here. Thank you. This takes us to citizens' comments, and David C. Fuentes. I hope I'm saying that correctly, David. Is David here? We've never had two absences. David? All right, what I'll do is set David aside, and Donald and Christine Main, I believe. And please state your name and your city, and then please proceed, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. Our names are Donald E. Main Jr. and Christine Main. We stand before you today hoping you're getting some resolutions why the police department and the city prosecutor is not enforcing the city ordinances and allowing this to continue. They keep on passing the buck and saying to file an ex parte order, but not file any charges. We have filed for an order of protection. The packet that has been given to you are some of the samples that what we are talking about. See exhibits 1 through 6 on your packet.
My family and I are being stalked, harassed, attempted assaulted, threatened, false reported, witness/victim tampering, and intimidating by an individual. On June 29th, 2023, we did email the city prosecutor describing what was happening. On June 30th, the city prosecutor notified us of a proposed letter that he was going to be sending to the individual, advising him that his actions would not be tolerated. We advised the city prosecutor at that time, whatever actions he takes against this individual, that he would retaliate. On July 14th, we were advised that the individual did receive the letter. Between that time, he continued his actions. On July 29th, 2023, stalking charges were filed against him. On August 22nd, we advised the city prosecutor of more messages that we received from the individual. On August 23rd, 2023, we received an email from the city prosecutor stating he was accusing Donald of posting statements on Facebook earlier that month that he would be recusing himself from the case.
This individual is continued his actions. As we stated, we are still being told by the officers filed an order of protection. There's nothing that can be done to stop him. He has been convicted in the past, and we are still receiving text messages from him. Officers even told us with the order of protection, there's nothing can be done to stop him. Question: why are we wasting our time, energy, resources of trying to get an order of protection if such order is in place that we will survive it could not be enforced? If you see in the past reports that the individual has done this to others, including but not limited to independent school districts, but to lead him to being banned from school, property, all, Power & Light employees and staff, did you advise him to go get an order of protection? No. You took reports and filed several charges. If you get caught speeding down one day, to do it again, don't you get more than one ticket? Our opinion is that each occurrence should be results of a citation or charges. We are demanding that all ordinances to be enforced. Thank you for your time. My information is on the form. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Very much. Appreciate that. Mr. Huff, you're next. If you could please state your name and address, please.
Nick Huff, 16709 East George Franklin Drive. Good evening, Council and Mayor. I've been coming to council meetings and listening for over 6 years. I'm a member of the City Charter Review Committee. I'm invested in my city and community. What happened 2 weeks ago with the approval of a resolution which was opposed by all citizens who were present showed great disregard. The council is elected to represent all citizens and not just the few you choose. In 2024 will bring the opportunity for new council members who will truly represent all citizens and who will never limit their voices. Thank you.
May I ask you to be respectful to people who may have different opinions, please? Thank you. Next, we have the presentation of the iStar Award.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, please.
it's come to my attention that the recipient of that award is on her way but running a bit late. I would move that to later in the agenda.
What would you recommend, Councilmember? What would be your motion to change the rules to just whenever?
Whenever Ms. Wiley arrives,
Okay.
that we could take that up.
Okay. Any objections? There's a second. There's a motion and a second to let Ms. Wiley receive her award when she gets here. Any objections? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So thank you, Councilmember, and we will go forward with that. All right. Next, we have proclamations. Is that correct? And Madam City Clerk, please proceed.
Whereas National Preparedness Month is a nationwide event held each September, and whereas the goal of National Preparedness Month is to increase awareness about the importance of preparing for disasters and to encourage individuals to take action, and whereas the City of Independence will not be truly prepared for a disaster until every individual, family, and business takes personal responsibility for being prepared, and whereas all residents of the City of Independence should take steps to prepare for emergencies, as residents must have the ability to care for themselves and their loved ones for an extended period of time during the emergency, such as making a plan, building an emergency kit, and learning more about the disaster preparedness overall. And whereas the City of Independence also officially recognizes the many volunteers involved with the Medical Reserve Corps, Greater Kansas City, the Community Emergency Response Team, the Search and Rescue Team, the Damage Assessment Team, the Disaster Animal Response Team, the Emergency Communications Service Team and Command Staff Team of volunteers who routinely offer their invaluable services to make our community safer.
Okay. And who will be receiving this? Absolutely. And we can certainly applaud this one. And if there are no objections, we'll go back to Ms. Wiley's presentation.
I'd move
Ms.
to,
Wiley be recognized, but if I may, I'll read the comments that were sent in for you to give you the nomination, and then we'll give you the presentation just like we did a second ago for the Preparedness Week. So with that, so reasons for nominating Donna Wiley, who works in police and patrol. She's an administrative assistant, and Donna's attitude towards her fellow employees always shows a very positive note. She is always willing to help and answer questions, even on her days off. Is this one of your days off, Donna? No, okay. And she says that since she had started with the city back in June of 2022, is that correct? 02, okay, very good. Since she started, she's been taking on administrative actions for her patrol, not parole. Have to make sure we say that correctly. Her current position, she works in administration for patrol, which includes about 100 officers on her payroll, administrative duties for the chief's office, while training other staff to take over when she's not there. She's always available to answer questions, and she's always helpful in anything that she does. She comes early. She took over payroll for investigations unit, which includes around 50 detectives and other civilians in specific payroll. Donna did this until her position was filled in late September, so 2022. So you were doing 2 jobs at that point, if I'm hearing that correctly. So well done. In mid-March 2023, she took over payroll for the detention unit, which includes about 10 detention officers and other civilians, and is still currently doing that while again doing her regular duties for patrol. So she's been juggling 2 positions with 0 complaints along the way. So that is a rare accomplishment. 2 positions and 0 complaints. That is very, very good, Donna. So with that, we just want to recognize Donna for her positive attitude, her willingness to work at any time, and her ability to be cheerful in the face of challenges and obstacles. So with that, Donna, if you can come forward, and we have a proclamation we have for you. So. Do I have a motion to?
I move that we approve the I-Star Award for Donna Wiley.
Okay. Do we have a second? We've got a motion and a second to approve 23775, a resolution for Donna Wiley. Any discussion? No further discussion. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears,
Yes.
Perkins, Stewart,
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. And 23775, resolution recognizing Donna Wiley, passes 7-0. And that will bring us to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move to approve the reports and recommendations of the city manager.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Are there any items that any council members would like to pull out for individual consideration?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
I'd like to pull 23777, please.
23777. Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay. Can I have a motion? We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. And the consent agenda is approved 7-0 with 23777 being pulled for consideration. Councilmember Perkins, please make a motion and then you have the floor.
I'll make a motion for approval of 23777.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Councilmember, please proceed.
Thank you. Just a quick highlight of why this is on here. This is semi-unusual. So not to go into the deep scrolls, the Kentucky Avenue Bridge has been closed for several years now, and we as a city has gone through the process of negotiating good faith with the city of Kansas City, and they have not lived up to their bargain to execute the agreement in which we had voted on as the city council. So we had an executive session several weeks ago, and within that conversation, it was agreed upon by the city council, and thank you very much for that discussion, that I would be able to speak with full counsel and authority as we present ourselves before Kansas City and their city council, and also their transportation and infrastructure committee. Since then, I have reached out again and have a meeting with Councilman Ray, my counterpart in Kansas City. I still have not heard anything back from Councilman Bunch. We also have a meeting scheduled with our leadership team, myself, Councilwoman McCandless, with the city manager, Brian Platt, and the Public Works Director and their counterparts there on the 27th. So this is the reason why I appreciate the support that I can speak on the entirety and for the City Council regarding this issue.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other further discussion on this item? We've got a motion and a second to approve 23777. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. And this brings us to our regular agenda. This takes us to our first public hearing. We'll open the public hearing. Go ahead.
A public hearing for the amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 14 of the Independent City Code relating to adult businesses. It's a full public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Rick Arroyo. I'm the Assistant Community Development Director here at the city. This UDO amendment was considered by Planning Commission on July 25th of this year. Planning Commission did vote in favor of this rezoning. This is a proposed UDO amendment that would update Section 14301-03 of the code to require approval of a special use permit for any adult business in the C2 district. I have no new information to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Arroyo. This is a full public hearing. Anyone here to discuss it? Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Philip Dickey. I live at 2401 South Ellison Way in District 3. I just want to say that I brought this to your attention almost a year ago, in regards to a business that's up at the top of my street. And I've had many conversations with many of you on council, and I thank you for your time and listening to me and my neighbors. I went in the middle of winter and polled all of my neighbors, 85 houses to be exact in my neighborhood, and they all agreed with me that this business does not belong in our community. And I believe our community has said that. And I think that this resolution I assume it's a resolution, right? I believe is a good start. I think we could do better on this resolution, and I think it can be stronger. But I just want to say thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to my neighbors. And I know that there's been lots of ups and downs through this process, but thank you. And I hope that this can pass.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor or opposition to this item? Anyone else to speak in favor or opposition or for information purposes only? Anyone here to speak in favor or opposition of this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And if you can do the second reading right here.
23-078, an ordinance amending the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 14 of the Independent City Code pertaining to office and commercial district uses for adult businesses. Second and final reading.
Any further discussion from any council members? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. 23078 passes 7-0. This takes us to our second public hearing, and I'll open this again. Please proceed.
A public hearing for the request of the City of Independence to rezone the properties located at 923, 924, 925, and 926 North Main Street from C2 General Commercial to R6 Single Family Residential. New information only.
Thank you again. This rezoning was considered by Planning Commission on July 25th of this year as well. Planning Commission did vote in favor of this rezoning. This is a city-initiated rezoning that takes a cluster of 4 properties that are currently zoned C2 to R6 residential. The lots currently do have residential single-family homes on them that have been used as that. This will correct that legal nonconformity. I have no new information to provide.
Any questions or discussions? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Madam City Clerk, please proceed.
23-079, an ordinance approving a rezoning from District C2 General Commercial to District R6 Single Family Residential for the properties at 923, 924, 925, and 926 North Main Street in Independence, Missouri. Second and final reading.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. And 23079 passes 7-0. This takes us to our third public hearing, and we'll open that public hearing. And Madam City Clerk, please proceed.
A public hearing on proposed property tax rate to be set by the City of Independence for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023, based on the current assessed valuation by Jackson and Clay counties. It's a full public hearing.
Okay. Melissa Sill, please proceed.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I am Melissa Sill. For those that don't know me, I'm the budget manager. We prepared a short presentation to give you for informational purposes tonight on the real estate tax levy that we are setting. This will be the first reading, and we will follow up with a second reading once we have the finalized numbers from Jackson County. So just real quickly, wanted to go over with you what the city's process is to set the tax levy. We're going to talk a little bit about what the property tax limitations are with the assessed values and our limit factor. We'll talk a little bit about the 2023 levy and the appeals that are currently ongoing at Jackson County. And at the end, we've added a few comparisons so that you can see what the impact will be on citizens and particularly our residential property owners. So first off, we can only set the levy for what has already been authorized by voters. So essentially, we receive a pro forma calculator from the Missouri auditor that we plug our numbers into. There are a couple of aspects that go into that. Number one, we have a cap on our general revenue for property tax, and that is $1 for every $100 of assessed value. And then we also have 40 cents for every $100 of assessed value for our health and recreation levy. Also, the state requires that the Missouri auditor annually review all the property taxes just to make sure that they are in compliance with state law. So we do get double checked on that and audited on that. And then once we get the numbers from the county, we are required to hold a public hearing at least 7 days before we set that levy. So we'll be coming back in a couple weeks for the final reading on that. So the property tax limitations that we're under. This comes from the Hancock Amendment, so that's been around since 1980, 1981. And then that sets restrictions on that property tax ceiling that we cannot go over because that is what has been approved by voters. And then the other factor that goes into that is the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So for this year, that limit was 6.5%. I'll also note that when we look at the levy, because of those limitations, most of the growth that we see and the revenue that we receive from this comes from new construction or new improvements that occur. So this year, because it is an odd number year, the county was required to do a biannual assessment. And what happened is we saw a pretty significant increase in residential property tax. So the average was about 30%. So you will see some comparisons that show you what that 30% looks like. You will see an actual property that saw a little bit more than that 30%. And the thing to keep in mind here is that although that is the average, and as we set the levy on a district-wide basis, there may be individual property owners that see more of an increase or more of a decrease. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So for our district, there were a total of 8,132 appeals. Jackson County, across the entire county, saw over 54,000 appeals. So they are still working through those even now. They are at I think a little over 50% complete at this point, and last time we spoke to them on August 24th, but those are still ongoing. And for City of Independence, we have seen 4,104 appeals that have been closed, 294 have been withdrawn, 3,021 are stipulated, and there are 820 board decisions. So this is a comparison. So let's say that last year in 2022, you had a house that had an assessed market value of $100,000. You'll see that taxable value and the assessed value, that's 19%. So all residential properties are assessed at 19% of whatever their total market value assessment is. And then you can see down below that what the levy rates were last year. So our total levy for general and health was 0.6059. And so that meant that taxpayer owed $115.12 just to the City of Independence. As we go through this tonight, we're only focusing on Independence as the other jurisdictions are still in the process of setting their levies. In 2023, if this property saw an increase of 30%, they would have seen an increase of $30,000. And they would actually, with the new rate, because it's going to be rolled back because of the increase that we've seen in assessed value, they would actually pay $1.01 less to the City of Independence. On comparison to, I actually pulled a house that is currently listed on Realtor.com. I was able to pull their property tax receipt from last year and see that their assessed value is at $122,000, and they paid $40.45 to the City of Independence. Now, their assessed value has gone up a little bit higher than average. They saw a 36.3% increase. So at our proposed levy rate, they would pay an additional $5.56 to the City of Independence. So something important to note there is although they saw a 36.3% increase in their assessed value, the amount that they're paying to the City of Independence is only an increase of 3.9%. So it is still less than the 6.5% CPI. So on our third comparison, I took another $100,000 house. I said, well, what happens if they see the same increase as the previous house, the 36.3%? So they would see a $4.52 increase that would be due to City of Independence. And then lastly, I pulled a house that was $100,000. Let's say that they go to the Board of Equalization. They're very persuasive. They don't believe that their property value has increased like everything else has in the city, and they're able to maintain their $100,000 evaluation. They would actually pay a decreased amount at the proposed levy rate this year of $27.34 to the City of Independence. And then lastly, provided a breakdown from a tax receipt that shows you all of the taxing jurisdictions that they're paying to. So City of Independence makes up about 8.2% of that total tax amount that they would pay for their property taxes. 73.6% would go to the Independence School District, 8% to Jackson County, 1.13% to the Board of Disabled Services, 1.5% to mental health, 2.75% to the Metro Junior College, 4.4% to Mid-Continent Library, and then finally 0.41% to the State Blind Pension. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Sill?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
have they given you any indication at all on when the county's going to be done with the appeals?
They're working through them as quickly as they can. They haven't given us a date when they will be done. Considering the amount of appeals that they have, they are moving through them very quickly. So one of the questions I asked is what happens, we set our levy at the end of the month, tax bills go out November 1st, what happens? They said that there are a couple options for our taxpayers, and one of them, if they pay under protest, those funds would be held from the city and released once this moves through the Board of Equalization. The other option is if and I should say after 90 days, if it's still not through, those funds are released back to the city after 90 days. And then the other option would be for a taxpayer to go ahead and pay, and then if they are owed some sort of refund once it goes through the BOE, they would withhold some of our tax receipts. So it is something that we would have to watch as we go into that tax collection, because we see most of our receipts are coming in December and January, but it could be something that gets delayed a little bit this year.
And Ms. Sill,
Mm-hmm.
our deadline for setting our levy is October 1?
Yes,
Is that right?
yes,
And that's set by state law.
it is, yes.
So we have to set that levy regardless of what the county does or does not do.
Yes. Yes, our final numbers from the county are due on 9/11.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
Ms. Sill, just so that I understand, are we forced to use the amount that is unappealed to set our levy, and then it can be reduced afterwards, which means that we do our best guess, but the city actually will be shortchanged if those assessments are reduced, and so the city could actually see a drop in its general revenue?
So we have to go with what the assessed value numbers are from the county. So whatever number they provide us. So that's where it comes into, they withhold some of our funds so that if there are refunds due back to taxpayers, that there would be funds to do that.
And can you give me the amount in the budget that we receive for property tax?
Yes. So according to the calculator that we use from the state, we are allowed to receive $6,080,101. In the budget, there is $5,963,000 for this budget year.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
So I would, I stand very cautiously in this process of trying to determine our levy. I don't know how we're honestly going to set it. There's too many pitfalls in this process, as we've seen, and more of them seem to be emerging. I spoke with a state rep, Mr. City Manager, the end of last week, and he had a conversation with the AG. The AG was unaware that we were having this issue with Jackson County, but now they're going to get involved. So I want us to be cautious in how we approach this, because this could be a huge financial setback for our city if we do this wrong. And, you know, I look at these numbers and I'm not chuckling at you. I just look at it with, I don't even know how we came up with 30%. I would love to meet some individuals who had 30% or less outside of me, but I know that my taxes went up. I caution us as a city in this whole levy setting process, and I'm still curious how they can still be doing appeals beyond the state statute required time. That's my concerns, and I think they're legitimate. And for us to assume that there's not going to be any situations where we could be damaged financially as a city, I'm not sure how we can stand in that position. So I don't know what our plan is moving forward with this, but I think we really need to engage at all levels and see what the AG is saying at the state now. Let him, because he's looking into it now from my understanding, and let's be cautious before we go setting, and let's find out if we have to set that at that hard date. I just don't want us to see us get locked in, because if you're asking me to trust the county to give us back money if we make a mistake, okay, yeah, but they will ask us for money if we make a mistake. So whatever you need to do, whatever support you need, Mr. Walker, you need to tell us what that looks like so that we can do it smartly.
Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else, other discussions?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
one more, sorry.
No worries.
What is the penalty if we didn't set the levy by the deadline?
We went through that 2 years ago with the same frustrations that this
Right.
body's facing. Ultimately, I would tell you, regardless of how others choose to follow or not follow the state statute, it's in our best interest to uphold our obligations.
Right.
It's mostly adverse circumstances if we don't. I know the council's
agree.
having a lot of conversations, and I think this thing with the Attorney General, thank you for that information. I think that's all important, to have all those irons in the fire and make sure we turn over every rock. At the end of the day, we have a charter obligation to serve our community, and it takes financial resources to do so. So let's not stop pursuing all those leads, but at the same time, I would encourage this body to fulfill our obligations under the law as well.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we don't meet that obligation. I was just curious. I remember that 2 years ago, and the county, if I remember correctly, was it February that they clawed $1 million back from us? Is that what it was?
It was over the course of several months, but yes, it was in excess of $800,000.
800,000, yeah. No, I remember that. You know, it's pretty rich, you know, that we get held to the strict standard of the law and others don't. You know, that's really a painful situation to be in, especially when we owe such a duty to a number of people, much stricter duty. And of course, we answer much more closely to citizens than the county does in many respects. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? Other further discussion? If I'm correct, if I may ask a question, Mr. City Manager, we're actually reducing our levy for a variety of reasons, Hancock being one of them, the CPI index, and the CPI index was 6.5%. If I can ask Ms. Sill, is that set by the federal government? How do we arrive at that 6.5% for the CPI index? Do you know, or?
Yes, so that is actually set by your state tax commission.
Okay. So, very good. I've always wanted to know that, and I've
Yeah.
never had that question answered. So, but going back to Mr. Walker, I think I know the answer to this. We have to reduce the levy because of the constraints of Hancock Amendment. When that happens, you see the examples that Ms. Sill produced earlier and how that has an impact on people's taxes. So,
That is correct.
Okay.
Because of the limitation and growth of revenue under Hancock, the body is being asked to, under the law, roll back our levy rate so that we don't capture anything more than the 6.5% of consumer price index amount. The only growth the municipality is allowed to see is in new construction, which is an issue in and to itself, but that is
Right.
the only place where we can see true growth year over year. Everything else must be within the confines of CPI only.
okay. And then 2 years later, that new construction would be constrained by the same
Correct.
process.
That becomes part of the base tax amount then, and only growth you would see out of that 2 years later is exactly what you said, Mayor, a CPI amount.
Okay. And this may be a question for Mr. Cover. If I'm correct, and I agree with the county legislature in doing this, they've actually invited the state auditor in to do an audit of their process to make sure they were following state law, but I'm not sure if, Mr. Cover, if you're aware of that, or Mr. Walker, if you're aware of that. But I've heard that, but I just wanted to verify that.
It is my understanding that has occurred, yes.
And I applaud them for that, because that's what we need to do to make sure that the state law has been followed, that we have the state auditor come in, take a look at the process, and then make the recommendations if it was in fact followed or not followed. So I think that was an appropriate behavior on behalf of the legislature, and I would applaud them for taking those steps so that other folks didn't have to get involved to do that. If there are no other discussions, no other questions? All right, thank you very much. If there's no other questions, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll. First read, thank you very much.
23-081, an ordinance levying a tax on all real property subject to taxation on January 1st, 2023, within the corporate limits of the City of Independence, Missouri, for general revenue and public health and recreation purposes, and for the Independence Square Special Benefit District, said levies and assessment being separate and distinct, all for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of July 2023 and ending on the 30th day of June 2024. The first reading.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sure.
That as far as the full public hearing goes, I just want to make sure that was fully announced and that we didn't have anyone else who wanted to speak on that, and that was then closed out once it's done.
That is a great observation. Thank you for that correction. And if I may, with no objections from anyone in the council, go back and ask if there's anyone else here that wants to speak in favor or opposition to the tax assessment and the process and the levy situation that we do. I'm asking anyone in the chamber.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Kenneth Love, 16808 East George Franklin Drive. Approximately 2.5 years ago, there was a special meeting at the time of we had elections going on in our city, where two people had a special meeting at the genealogy discussing Jackson County taxes. I'm sure one may remember that one that's sitting here today. Back then, he agreed and thought the state should be handling our taxes and the state only. Still to the day, it's still our county. Back then, it was said that your rates should not go over 16%. 2 years later, we're facing 35, 40, 50, 60%. I also brought it to the council about this tax revenue that we should be looking into is ourselves. Due to the fact Jackson County cannot be trusted. Jackson County knew it when they hired Titan. They was hiring a company that has been sued so many times. This is all record, black and white. How can you trust Jackson County knowingly, sitting here knowingly, like me standing here right now? I'm Kenneth Love. I'm just a dumb poodle on the wall. But to know and look at Titan of how many times they've been sued. I can tell you I've got 14 properties. Each and every one of them is being challenged. The letter that came in the mail today stated that due to documents not received at the county, we're going to have to prolong your hearing. Then we get an email right before this council meeting was to start. If you're available this coming Friday, we'd like to meet. The left hand don't know what the right hand's doing. I totally understand our city is being held accountable to a higher standard to owe the state money. But sometimes we have to stand up for our residents like y'all are supposed to. And that's what I think y'all should do over this issue when it comes to the tax levy, is stand up to the residents until all this is over with and done with and we have true numbers. That way it doesn't hurt our city, it doesn't hurt my pocket, or maybe even your pockets. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition?
My name's Philip Dickey, 2401 South Ellison Way. I just listening to the lady's presentation, I'm concerned about the 30%. I think she said that it was 30% across the board that was raised. I think that was the average, if I'm not mistaken. So I heard that there's 15% should be like it shouldn't go over 15%. Every time that we have a tax increase. I think that it would be great if the council itself could flex its muscle to the county and just say, hey, can we get this done to where that we cannot go over 15% on taxes for every household. I think across the board that would be great. I think that would help people and this hoopla would not happen again. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition? Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition? Anyone else want to speak in favor or opposition? Okay. That'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
So can we go ahead and do the first reading again, just
Yep,
now
absolutely.
that we've closed
So
the
we're
public
in
hearing?
sequence.
Thank you.
Perfect.
An ordinance levying a tax on all real property subject to taxation on January 1st, 2023 within the corporate limits of the City of Independence, Missouri for general revenue and public health and recreation purposes, and for the Independence Square Special Benefit District, said levies and assessments being separate and distinct, all for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of July 2023 and ending on the 30th day of June 2024. It's the first reading.
Please proceed.
Just for clarity's sake, I just want to be sure everybody's level set, that we are not in charge of the assessed values or of the process that come to the assessed values, and that we're being asked to vote on the city doing its work according to its charter requirements to set the process. Am I correct in that, Mr. City Manager?
You're correct. This is separate
the
and
first
apart from the county's responsibility to assess the properties. This is the city as a taxing jurisdiction setting our levy rate. Mayor, if I may add one thing, because I think it's timely.
Please.
To Councilmember Hobart, your earlier question about the failure to adopt the levy rate, Section 67.110 of state statute states that should any political subdivision fail to fix its property tax rate by the date provided, October 1st, then no tax rate shall be certified for that year. So we would forfeit the $5.9 to $6 million that's been budgeted.
Can I ask a question about that? Any jurisdiction? Was that the language?
Any political subdivision
Does that include the county?
for setting their levy rate, yes.
Okay, so if they're not prepared to set it, how do we do it?
We set it based on the figures that we've received, and then we either do adjustments to our levy moving forward or in the next fiscal year.
How are they gonna set a levy rate with continued appeals?
I can't speak for them.
I understand that, but it puts us in a bad situation when they're still going through an appeal process, which means they haven't had a final review of their levy being set. So how are we obligated to set a levy based on their numbers when their numbers aren't even set because they're still hearing appeals? That puts us in a bad situation. I'm not putting you.
Oh, I know.
Listen, listen.
Certainly.
This
Yep.
is okay with me. I understand that. I'm just saying.
Yep.
This makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah.
From a legal standpoint,
Sure.
it makes absolutely no sense. All we're doing is playing the county's game, and I'll tell you, I'll be the first to say I'm sick of them. They need to come out and they need to do the right thing for the people that they serve. And I know that I'm directing this at you, but I'm not directing this at you.
Not taken that way, yep.
But when I hear that, I struggle to understand how a portion of that law applies to us, but it doesn't apply to them. And we're setting ours based on their ability to set theirs. So I don't know how we can be pinned down on a rate that is not accurate, and it could do damages to our ability to run our municipality, which is absolutely wrong. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Please proceed.
Mayor, thank you. Just to remind the audience, this council, about 2 months ago, we did act in unison to pursue legal actions against the county. We've had several executive sessions regarding that to explore those different options. And I said it then, and I say it now, the county has acted absolutely recklessly and savagely against the citizens of this city in the first district. And I gave the statistics of Mount Washington, Carlisle, Fairmont neighborhoods. So we are looking at this as aggressively as we can, and we are just as frustrated and fit to be tied as anything else. But we're going to still keep plugging away at that. But we are still working at all those different revenues.
Also, the further discussion. Okay, that brings us to our non-ordinance items. And Madam City Clerk, please read 23772, please.
A resolution directing the city manager to review the city code of ordinances and any other policies or procedures currently in effect regarding tow service and to provide recommendations for further action related to these items by December 11th, 2023, requested by Councilmember Stewart.
Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor.
Please proceed.
So I'd asked this to be discussed at our last study session, and we really didn't have a discussion there at that. But I have had a chance to talk to Councilmember Stewart about this and do understand his concerns and why he's brought this forth. I really only have one question, I think, if I could ask the city manager.
Please proceed.
And that is, what is the December 11th date a practical date for you? Is that, what does that do to other priorities in going on in the community development area? And I'm just trying to just want to know how that impacts city staff.
It could be practical. It probably will require some shuffling of some of the other priorities, the things that the council has asked for in the action plan. So there's a couple of major UDO amendments coming up, the used car lot and car wash and gas station cap is the first one to come to mind. There's also one regarding multifamily properties. So it may, if we need to prioritize that one for December 11th, it may slow some of those other ones down. If we're pliable on that December 11th date, I think we could keep our other projects marching forward and bring this forward a little later.
Any thoughts in terms of what might be a more reasonable date for staff to respond?
No later than that first quarter of 2024, sometime in the first 3 months there. I definitely think we could absolutely get it done. No, just giving myself a little cushion there, but somewhere within that first quarter of 2024, we absolutely could get that done.
Okay. Well, based on that, Mr. Mayor, I'd make an amendment that we move to amend that would state by sometime in the first quarter of 2024.
There's a motion for an amendment to make this the information being brought back to us by the end of the first quarter of 2024. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second for the amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
so I'm not, I mean, I asked for this, but I did not set that December the 11th date, and I had no indication to this point that that wasn't feasible. So I'm going to be voting no on the amendment.
Okay. Anyone else?
Mr.
Or
Mayor.
further discussion? Please proceed.
If I may ask Councilmember Stewart, so are you okay with it as it reads right now?
I'm okay with it as it reads right now, and obviously if the city manager needs more time, he can come to us and I'd be willing to give it to us, but I'm not sure where the date came from. It wasn't from me. That was put in there after I asked for the resolution.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
if I might inquire Councilmember Stewart, just a
Sure.
one or
Please
two
proceed.
sentences, what's the issue, what are you after?
Personally, about 20 years ago, I was taken advantage of by a tow truck company, or what I felt taken advantage of, and there's been some articles recently about some stuff going on in our city with tow trucks, and I just want to make sure that we're, have the best policies in place. And I don't want to make sure, I don't want to pinpoint anybody individually, because I think probably 99% I'm running an honest business. But I think in any business, there's ways that they can take advantage of people. So that's what I'm looking for.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a roll on the amendment. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears?
Yes?
Perkins?
No.
Stewart?
No.
McCandless?
Yes.
Steinmeier?
No.
Hobart?
No.
Mayor Rowland?
Yes. The motion fails 3-4. So this brings us back to the main motion, which has the December 11th date. Any further discussion on the main resolution? Any further discussion on the main resolution? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll for 23772.
Fears?
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. And this passes 7-0. 23-772 passes 7-0. This takes us to our second readings. Madam City Clerk, please proceed.
23-075, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to accept a grant from Mid-America Regional Council in the amount of $89,417 for the city's senior adult nutrition site program for fiscal year 2023-2024, and execute the Community Center Services Agreement, making the necessary appropriations, authorizing future change orders for additional funding and/or time extensions, and authorizing certain future appropriations. Second and final reading.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart. McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. 23-075 passes 7-0. Madam City Clerk, please read the next bill.
23-076, an ordinance amending Article 3 of Chapter 5 of the City Code by enacting new sections to add requirements for extended stay hotels. Second and final reading.
Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
to inquire the city manager.
Please proceed.
Mr. City Manager, can you just give a summary of this and explain why this was a necessary amendment?
Yeah, I think as many of you, as the council members know, and certainly many of our community members, there are residents in our community that these extended stay hotels are home for them, at least for a period of time. And we want to make sure, and we've heard some feedback that that's not always the most pleasant experience from a sanitation perspective. So this ordinance gives the city some more regulatory authority to address those establishments and make sure that that's a safe sanitary experience for everyone there, particularly those that are utilizing this as home, whether that be temporarily or for an extended period of time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yes.
Hobart.
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes. 23-076 passes 7-0. Madam City Clerk, please read the next bill.
23-077, an ordinance amending Chapter 5 of the City Code, Business and Occupation Licenses. Second and final reading.
Any discussion on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
just curious, who sponsored this resolution?
This came as a staff recommendation.
Staff recommendation. My concern is some of the language in it, and I'm not going to read it because it's not appropriate for your young daughter who's here tonight, so.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, but my concern is that some of this language that's in here, in the 3rd District, we have a couple of restaurants that I guess if somebody wanted to make an issue of, it would, their business license could fall in jeopardy because of the dress code that the restaurant has. And restaurants have a hard enough go right now. I certainly would want it to not be used for that. And that's a concern of mine.
In speaking with our community development director and the team that put this together, we believe that the application is very narrow, that we're talking more about the types of businesses where individuals or couples might go purchase things for themselves, not the dining establishments or other entertainment facilities like that.
Well, there's language in there that talks about servers and anyone that receives gratuities and those kinds of nature. And I get the language part. I agree with that. My concern is if a restaurant that has a certain model of business, it could fall under this. And you won't always be here, we won't always be here, but someone on a moral crusade could come in and go, we're going after all of it. And that would be maybe an overreach. I wish there was a specific exemption for a restaurant or that kind of language. If we could incorporate that, it would make, I think, the businesses in the 3rd District a little more at ease. Is that something that you and your staff would agree to? Or
If
would
given
want to
the-
look at that again?
If given the direction, we'd be happy to take a look at it.
Is that something that I don't know if Jeremy wouldn't need to get involved, but the language just being massaged a little bit. Looks like we got a meeting of the minds over there, so.
They're just reminding me that it doesn't cover restaurants, and I let them know you disagree.
Is there something that we could add to that where restaurants are exempt from that?
Tonight, we've got this second reading. It would take an action from that side of the dais of making an amendment.
All right, so I would, Mr. Mayor, I move to amend the language to exempt restaurants that are, if we want to, we can say existing restaurants in our city. Something to that effect.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second to amend it to, if I remember correctly, Mr. Councilmember, the motion was to exempt existing restaurants in the city, if I'm
Right.
correct. Okay.
Right.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
please proceed.
address the city manager or city councilor one. Did I understand you to say that this particular section of the code does not apply at all to restaurants? Is that correct?
That's our opinion.
So if we add this language in, then that is essentially now being, number one, redundant, but number two, does that create a scenario where we all of a sudden are applying it to restaurants or in the future? Because you said existing restaurants, so I'm confused here at the impact of that.
Sure, and I'm sort of trying to do a fast scan as you all are talking to figure out exactly where this may come into play. I guess what I'm going to say is I would be concerned about making that kind of amendment on the fly without being able to go through everything to see exactly what, how that may or may not affect anything. So it's up to you all, obviously, at this point, what happens to it, but I would not recommend making that amendment right now without us being able to do a thorough review of all the language to see exactly how that's going to fit in and if that's going to cause an issue anywhere else. That's my recommendation. It's up to you all.
So if we're to pass this now without the amendment, then we could always come back and take another look at it later, correct? To address this concern?
Yes, passing it doesn't mean we can't change
Right,
it
that's my point.
down the road. That's
Right,
correct.
Right.
The question would be, would you?
We'd have to direct the staff to do that.
Well, then
Correct.
allow them time to do that. I have two restaurants, you have two restaurants in a district you represent that could be put in jeopardy by the language of this.
But
And if you're not familiar with the language, go look at it. I think it's pretty clear what it says. And so if somebody decides that they want to file a complaint based on this language, you could put two restaurants in my district, your district, at risk. And I don't see why it's such a big thing to help them be able to stay in business and not have,
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead,
Well, I'm
John.
not sure if Councilmember.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. Go ahead, John.
No, I thought you were done. I'm sorry. Okay. Have you had any, Councilman Steinmeier, have you had any dialogue with Mr. Walker over this previously?
Yes. Yes, I have.
In-
And I shared my concerns. I did. And I know that I've had also a dialogue with the general manager of one of those restaurants. And it's concerning. I'm
Sure.
It's not, listen, it's not that it's going to happen tomorrow, but it takes one complaint, and
Sure.
then all of a sudden we have to go out and we have to look at it and see. And if you have someone that wants to make an issue of it, with the language being what it is, they could in fact put their license in jeopardy.
For sure.
And that's all, I'm just trying to protect the businesses that we have established right now.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor.
If Mr.
sorry.
Councilmember Perkins.
I'm sorry.
If you were finished.
Just going to say, Councilman Steinmeier and I have talked quite a bit over the past months of discussing this and making sure it is the best that it could be. And I was just hopeful that you had that dialogue with our city manager through verbal conversations or emails and try to address this before now is a thing, because I didn't realize this was still an issue with you, and I'm surprised to hear right now that this is still an issue. That's why I was concerned.
Councilmember, please
Mr.
proceed.
Mayor. Mr. Cover, could you,
Yes, sir.
in section, or the last part of this, it says in section 10, this section outlines lawful non-conforming of any existing adult business. Can you tell me what that means?
I'm trying to. Let me try to find where you are.
Last paragraph of the main page on number 10. It's the second sentence. I mean, it seems to me that this wouldn't affect any existing businesses. Would that be accurate? It would only affect new businesses?
Yes, that would be our position.
Okay. That's all I have.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Mayor,
Please proceed.
I think we're a bit stuck. Maybe not totally stuck, but a little bit stuck. I would suggest a bit of a compromise. If the council would consider it, I would maybe ask Councilmember Steinmeier to withdraw his motion if the council would consider a motion to continue this just for 2 weeks. Maybe his concerns could get resolved, to give some additional time to discuss the matter with the city councilor and the city manager. I'd be open to input on that.
Okay. So this is kind of a subsection of that amendment, if I'm putting it in Robert's Rules process, is anyone,
If that gives anybody heartburn.
yeah, anybody opposed to postponing this? And so your recommendation is, Councilmember, is to postpone it for 2 weeks, let the parties work out their differences and come back?
I'll pull that amendment. Yeah.
Okay. So
If that's the
Councilmember,
case, then I'd make a motion to just set this over for one meeting. Set the second, I'll move to postpone this second reading to the next regular meeting,
the next regular city council meeting?
city council meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just so
Please.
the council's aware of the outcome of the decision, no opinion here.
Right.
You've passed the UDO amendment, so now you've got a UDO amendment that will be incongruent with city code. If any adult entertainment businesses apply in the next 2 weeks, which I think the odds are low, but just know that there is a lack of consistency between what the UDO says and the city code now says.
Okay. So am I hearing your recommendation to go ahead and approve this tonight and then make an amendment to address Councilmember Steinmeier's concerns going forward? Is,
Well, I
is that what I'm
certain-
hearing, or?
Well, I just want you to know that if we suspend this tonight and continue it for 2 weeks, that any businesses that, the low probability that it is, but any that come in to apply in the next 2 weeks, we've got an inconsistent code with our uniform development ordinance.
Okay.
I am happy, I think staff can work on an amendment to this restaurant issue very quickly to make sure there's more clarity brought to the issue. But I just want you to know, if you postpone it, that's the outcome. And again, the odds are probably infinitely small, but I just
Right.
would not be doing my job if I didn't bring it to your attention.
Very good. Good point.
Do you, Mr. Mayor?
Please proceed.
If we want to, we can vote on it as it stands with the commitment the city staff will work with me to bring forth some amendment that would exempt that restaurant language. Can we do that?
Yes, sir. That your commitment or your concern is noted, and it's something we can meet with you as we've done on other issues and make sure we try to flesh that out and bring something forward that's more in keeping with your vision to support those businesses you've identified.
I'm not opposed to that. I just want to make sure that we do something like that, though, to amend that language.
And again, because I know we're looking at a narrow issue, I think we can get something done relatively quickly and get that back in front of the council soon to make sure we don't have too long of a gap before we get that implemented in the code.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, my motion wasn't seconded, so I'll go ahead and withdraw that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Back to square one, Mr. Mayor.
That is why we have a deliberative body. Any further discussion on this item? He did. So to clarify, the amendment was withdrawn. Mr. Hobart's modification or recommended modification wasn't seconded, so it didn't receive legs. So we're back to the main item, and so we can discuss the main item. But what I'm hearing Mr. Steinmeier would ask the body or ask staff to do is to work with him in order to get some language that would satisfy his concerns, and I'm certainly in favor of that. And I think I don't see any objections from anybody else on the body with regards to that. So with that being said, we can pass this item tonight, have staff work on it. It's kind of our legislative intent, and then we can go forward and pass it tonight and then look at modifications or amendments later. That's what I'm understanding. Anyone else have any different of opinion? Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes, 23077 passes 7-0. Madam City Clerk, please read the next bill.
23-080, an ordinance approving a budget amendment for an additional $300,000 to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget for Power and Light, second and final reading.
Any discussion on this item? Mr. City Manager, just for discussion's sake, Mr. City Manager, on discussion for 23080, $300,000 added to the budget. Just kind of give us an update if you could.
Pardon me, sorry to turn that off. Now that the council's approved the two different actions, staff is in the process of negotiating final scope and fee with the two firms identified for the two studies related to Independence Power and Light. This is our best guess of the up to amount of what we think it will cost to deliver those. So the amendment, if approved, will allocate that $300,000 from the fund balance of Power and Light to support those two projects. Of course, then bringing back the final contracts for council approval will be necessary, but this puts those funds in place should the council approve the final agreements.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else have other questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Fears,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Stewart,
No.
McCandless.
Yes.
Steinmeier.
No.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Rowland.
Yes, 23080 passes 5-2. This brings us to first readings, so Madam City Clerk, please proceed.
23-082, an ordinance amending Chapter 20, Public Works Manual of the Independent City Code and all references to this chapter. 23-083, an ordinance approving a rezoning from District R6, single-family residential, to District R12, two-family residential, for the property at 704 North Pearl Street in Independence, Missouri. 23-084, an ordinance terminating redevelopment Project 1 of the North Independence Tax Increment Financing Plan, dissolving the Special Allocation Fund for Redevelopment Project 1 of the North Independence Redevelopment Area, and authorizing and directing the city manager or the city manager's designee to take all necessary steps to implement these aforementioned actions. 23-085, an ordinance amending Section 12.01.003A, assault of the Independent City Code. 23-086, an ordinance authorizing the city clerk to do all things necessary for the holding of a primary and general election within the city of Independence, Missouri, in compliance with the charter adopted by said city as amended, and all state laws in reference thereto, and to certify to the Jackson County Board of Election Commissioners all names of candidates properly presented by petition under the charter, and for the holding of a primary election on February 6, 2024, and a general election on April 2nd, 2024.
Thank you. And this brings us to information. Thank you. Okay. This brings us to councilmember comments. Councilmember Stewart, please proceed.
I do not have anything tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Several items tonight. I was reading the Independent Examiner about retired Pastor Bob Spradling, who is going to be the recipient of the 2023 Citizen of the Year Award. I'm excited to hear that. Is very well deserved. I'm sure many of, if not everybody up here, knows Bob, and I still reach out to Bob frequently, talk about homeless issues, outreach issues, recovery issues, as recently this summer, just a few months ago. So I'm excited for that. It's going to be a good event at the award ceremony for him. He's retired, but he's still very active. I reach out to him for some wisdom as well, and as many other things. So if you haven't noticed, those who haven't driven on 24 Highway, as starting today, we are starting construction on a $30+ million project that has been in the discussions for 5 years, since 2018-ish. So we are finally beginning to turn dirt on that. That is one of the biggest investments the City of Independence and MoDOT has done in Western Independence. Probably 50 years. We are moving forward with that. So I say that for two reasons. One is exciting. Two, for those who drive 24 Highway, with this construction, it's going to be a multi-year construction. Those lanes are going to be reduced as construction goes through. It's a massive project, so you can almost probably play 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon to a construction worker you know, a utility worker you know. Evergy is working on Sugar Creek side. So you could probably touch somebody and know someone who's going to be working on there. So drive careful and drive slowly. And the other exciting thing about this is not only the infrastructure improvement, but it's going to be the financial impact that takes place in the Old Town Fairmont. We had meetings just last week with Adam and Pat Farrell from the Fairmont Community Center, pulling a team so we can do economic redevelopment for that. That section alone is going to be $8.2 million. So as we move forward, exciting. the city's going to look different in the next 4 to 5 years as these projects get moving, get started. Remind people that we did unanimously approve a master developer for the square, for this, the heart of our city. So 5 years, we're going to be looking good. Progress is being made. Economic redevelopment is being had. Big thank you to the chamber and the folks who volunteered their time for Santa Calagon. I was up here a couple of times. I think it went off pretty well without a hitch, but I'm an outsider looking in. I'm sure there's some stories, but I think overall it went pretty well. Then one thing, I did speak to the mayor prior to the meeting for one correction. We did have a council meeting a couple of weeks ago in the business meeting, whereas we were discussing our procedural process of how we put an item on the agenda as a council member. And one of the items that we discussed and one of the issues that were raised was the health department. When we decentralized our health department, the mayor inadvertently said it was a council member who brought that up to discuss, and it was not a council member who brought that forward to discuss the decentralization of our health department. It was actually city staff or city manager, through his much research, discussed that, brought it to the council that we worked on. So just make a matter of note, just for clarification for that. So I appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.
That's it for me this evening.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Fears?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor. Hope everybody had a good holiday.
Very good. Councilmember Steinmeier?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I too wanted to address the council meeting last where we talked about the health care and that being an illegal action. I appreciate Mr. Walker sending out an email just kind of clarifying how that all came about. I think in light of transparency, I just want to set the record straight that there was nothing illegal about what took place with that health department by any elected official prior to me, even in the last council meeting. I also had a couple of phone calls. I live with 4 very strong women, and they were not real happy, and I got a couple of phone calls. As a matter of fact, I got one today asking how I felt about the analogy that was used. And I wrote a statement, just wanted to make it clear where I stand on that analogy. But today, I would like to address that remark where that was made in a comparison where it was suggested that a wife required her husband's permission to buy property. It is not only outdated, but diminishes the strides women have made in both professional and economic spheres. And it is essential for us as a community to understand and acknowledge the gravity of such statements and the impact that they have. Throughout history, women have faced systematic barriers in nearly every aspect of society, from voting rights to workplace equality. Using a metaphor that harks back to those times does more than just perpetuate stereotypes, it diminishes the hard-fought battles and progress achieved over the decades. Women today of all earnings and professional levels are independent, they're strong, and capable of making their own decisions both personally and professionally. So to use such an analogy in our current era is not only inaccurate, but also undermines the accomplishments of countless women who have broken barriers, led revolutions, and paved the way for younger generations. Our mothers, sisters, and daughters and colleagues deserve to be seen for who they are, individuals who contribute meaningfully to our society and our economy. Moreover, it's critical or crucial for all those in leadership positions to recognize and understand the implications of our words. As leaders, we bear the responsibility of setting the tone for discussions and shaping the narratives that influence our community. Words have power, and they can either uplift and unify or alienate and divide. So I urge all elected officials, be mindful of the diverse constituents we serve. We must move forward with understanding, respect, and inclusivity, ensuring that our words and actions reflect the values and aspirations of all residents. I hope this incident serves as a reminder for all of us to continuously educate ourselves and strive for a society where everyone, regardless of gender, is recognized for their worth and potential. Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember?
That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember McCandless?
I wanted to thank everybody involved in Santa Calagon. Special recognition to our EMS folks and IPD who kept people safe. It was well attended, it was well run, so a successful event. On the consent agenda, wanted to just highlight an agreement to improve benefits for our CWA folks, which is the 911 staffers, and just we appreciate very much their very difficult work and glad that we're able to take good care of them as essential city employees. I wanted to just highlight also the grant that we received from Mid-America Regional Council for senior meals serves 13,700 meals to seniors in our community and also helps with transportation for people who need that. So an important service that is easy to gloss over when we just approve the grant and people don't know what it's for. And my last item is just for folks to think about participating in the Independence Transportation for All survey that is available as we try to think about what transportation opportunities there are for people who have cars, people who walk, people who bike, people who ride buses. So input really important, and that website is Independence Transportation for All. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hobart?
One thing very briefly, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I just wanted to give a way premature shout out to our city manager. He is the president of his Rotary Club, and as president of his Rotary Club, he gets to have some significant input on how they spend the proceeds of their big fundraiser every year. And it's not my place to say what they may or may not spend that money on, but very unselfishly, they are looking at spending it in a way that may have a very big impact on the city of Independence in a huge area of need, in a way that he and I and several other council members have been talking about for years and years. So it's exciting, and knock on wood, which there is some real wood somewhere around here, and that's kind of teasing a thing, but anyway, I wanted to give my thanks to him and have everybody cross their fingers and toes that it all works out. So appreciate that, Mr. Walker. And any updates from Santa Calagon? Was it a good? I didn't hear any terrible stories, so hopefully.
The police chief never called or texted, which is my line.
That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, I also want to say congratulations on a successful Santa Calagon. Well done for all the volunteers. I know there was a tremendous police presence there, and everyone did a great job. I know it's a lot of hard work. It's very hot. I don't know how you do it in those blue uniforms that look black to me, but they would be incredibly hot. So I hope everyone stayed safe and healthy in that regard. So great job. Also, this Saturday, we had Samoan Flag Day, which is a celebration of the Samoan community in our city. They had an outstanding celebration. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend that you go see it. It is truly inspirational. It is extremely interesting, and they speak in their native tongue, and so it was like going to a UN meeting. It was very interesting, and they just do a great job making everyone there feel very welcome. So they do a great job. This Saturday, we'll have the mayor's trash pickup, and I don't have the location, but please look online.
It's going to be Fairmont Park or Fairmont area.
Okay, so be in the Fairmont Park area, so we'll be over there, and but it'll be posted on the website so people can meet us there and be ready to go. And we typically meet at 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, so that would be great. With that, we'll close this meeting, and thank you all very much.